How do you know, lore friend? It's freaking you, and welcome back to another video where today we will be talking about Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now, Tatsu is a truly elite flying coaster, as the title states, and today we're going to be simply looking at Tatsu as a whole and seeing why this coaster is truly elite and is a coaster that pretty much everyone, if you like coasters, specifically coasters that make you feel like you're flying, should get out to, because this coaster is just amazing for making you feel like you're flying. So, without further ado, let's get started with some history. The park where Tatsu is located, Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California, was a park that opened way back in the 1970s, specifically 1971, mainly simply just to give people reason to live in the neighborhood of Valencia, which had been newly established at the time because a bunch of people were living in LA at the time and they needed more housing. So they opened the park, and out of a bunch of events that would take way too long to go over right now, eventually Magic Mountain became one of two coaster capitals in the US, with the only other one being, of course, Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Now, if we skip past all of the 80s, 70s, and 90s stuff, we get to the early 2000s, when Magic Mountain, and Six Flags as a whole, was being pretty stupid, and essentially what they were doing was they were investing a bunch in their parks by adding like $30 million additions every single year, and very obviously adding $30 million additions every single year is pretty good for things like having El Toro and, well, what this video is about, Tatsu around. It wasn't too good for Six Flags' wallet, so that ended up bringing them into bankruptcy shortly after Tatsu opened. And yeah, this ride shouldn't, if Six Flags was smart, Tatsu and a bunch of other very good coasters in the Six Flags chain would not exist, because Six Flags would have realized what they were doing and decided maybe we shouldn't do this. But because Six Flags was dumb, and apparently still is dumb, they, only 3 years after they added Scream, the B&M Floorless, to the park, they decided they would add a B&M Flyer. Flying coasters were relatively new at the time, with the first one being added on March 16th, 2002, which was Air, now Galactica, at Alton Towers in the UK. Six Flags had a little bit of experience with B&M flying coasters, because they added a good few flying coasters in the form of the Superman Ultimate Flight clones at various Six Flags parks, so they knew what they were getting into with this. They decided that they would put a flying coaster, which, might I add, is already really expensive because, you know, the station has to be able to do this. And it's a B&M, meaning it's already expensive because of how B&M likes to overdo their coasters safety-wise. But they decided to put this expensive machine on a freaking hill, making it even more expensive, leading to a wonderful cost of $21 million. Now, that isn't actually too expensive, but good God, that is still really expensive for a Six Flags who was adding those kinds of additions yearly. Tatsu started with them temporarily closing what at the time was called the Orient Express. This is now a ride that I completely forgot the name of, to be perfectly honest, but it was called the Helpful Honda Express. Rumors were circulating that this may be an attraction that Magic Mountain was removing because of the construction of Tatsu. But as we know now, this ride was never actually removed, and thank God it was never actually removed. As construction went along, eventually footers started popping up, or the starts of footers started popping up, and supports, track pieces, and general station pieces started showing up for this mystery new ride. At this time, a few things were known. This ride would in fact be an B&M, most likely a flyer, and it would be going next to the Magic Mountain Tower, or Sky Tower, or whatever it's called. And then eventually, Tatsu was announced.
Born of fire, forged from fear, the beast has risen. Part myth, part metal. Introducing Tatsu, the longest, tallest, fastest flying coaster on the planet. Fly at the speed of fear. Buy one admission, get one free every day with any can of Coke.
And because this was Six Flags Magic Mountain, Tatsu would have to open as the world's tallest, the world's fastest, and the world's longest flying coaster, which it did manage to accomplish. After this, construction began going further and further, with verticality eventually starting. And then, in December of 2005, the lift hill was topped off, with finally a video that I could find of it, and I will show that here.
Here we are at the lift topping event. Up, up it goes. Swinging around. And almost there. Do not drop that piece. Almost there. And is it good? Is it soup yet? Are we done? And we got it. We got it. Almost. Looking good. And yay! And here is Tatsu, except missing most of it.
After this, construction continued as the ride grew and grew and grew, until, finally, on May 13th, 2006, Tatsu opened to the public, and it was a pretty good ride, but we're not done with it yet, because I have one more thing to say about its opening. To my knowledge, on its Media Day, a bunch of people at Media Day decided they would camp out near Magic Mountain, or at Magic Mountain. I don't really know, considering how the footage I'm looking at is in, like, 144p, but, like, good God, it's Tatsu. It's a flying coaster. You are really? I'm like, yeah, when they did with this Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, I could understand that, but, like, Tatsu? Really? Because we still have to go over some stuff that it went to afterwards. Tatsu's life was going pretty smoothly, and then the world did its oopsie and closed for 2 years, but because California was so strict with its laws, all theme parks in California were not allowed to reopen until spring of 2021. So pretty much every single coaster was kind of sitting there doing nothing, including Tatsu. And when Magic Mountain reopened, Tatsu was doing pretty well. But then on June 18th of 2021, I literally visited the park on June 16th of 2021, by the way, and that was where I got my first rides on Tatsu, so I got really lucky here. But Tatsu had an electrical fire near its station, which very obviously that is not good for a coaster to have an electrical fire. So the ride ended up being closed for the entirety of the rest of the summer season, which was not good at all, considering how Tatsu can be a pretty big people eater, and with Tatsu now closed, everyone had to go anywhere else in the park, which was not good for crowds. Especially with how Magic Mountain was not doing well with keeping people out of the park, considering how they had to keep it at like 30% capacity, when very obviously it was not working. And then when Tatsu finally reopened in fall of 2021, it just couldn't have a break with its closures, because Tatsu was already scheduled to get a major repaint in November/late October of that year. And yeah, Tatsu just got really unlucky here, because with only 2 months left of its old paint being there, and in general 2 months left of it being open in the 2021 season, it closed once again for a repaint where it then finally reopened and now is stayed open in March of 2022. And now we can get to the actual ride and queue. So let's start off with the ride. You start off by climbing up the technically 170-foot tall lift hill. I say technically because it is on top of a hill, meaning it gets some extra feet off of the ground. As you climb higher and higher, you can see the city of Valencia and Santa Clara all around you, as well as the rest of Magic Mountain. You can feel the wind, which I notice distinctively on this ride as you climb down the lift hill, and you go through the first turn of the ride. You go flying over some pathways and some trees as you go through your first inversion, a small little roll. Then you go flying over a bunch of the park as you see Classic Revolution, and then you go through another roll. You fly very close down to the pathways and you get to see the rest of the park, as well as just the rest of the park in general. Then you fly over the maintenance building and go into one of the most intense moments out of any coaster ever, the Pretzel Loop, where you get smashed into your seat at like 5 Gs most likely, and then you go out and then you go into the rest of the graceful ride. You go through the final inversion, then you go through one final turn as you get another view of the rest of the park, and then into a, what I like to call a fake-out break, where you sort of break, but you don't really. Then after that you go through a small little turn again, and into the actual final brake run. That was Tatsu, and it is certainly an elite flying coaster with how it makes you really feel like you are flying. Anyway, now for the rest of the video. And there you have it, Tatsu. Now, why do I think Tatsu is truly elite, and why do all the other coaster enthusiasts think Tatsu is truly elite? Well, because just simply look at what you just saw in that POV. You're in the flying position that entire time, and with the extremely intense Pretzel Loop, which makes me gray out every single time I ride it, and with how it makes you just feel like you're flying, truly flying, unlike any other flying coaster, because yes, I have ridden another flying coaster, that being Manta at SeaWorld Orlando, and while that one does still give you a flying feeling, it's not nearly as good as Tatsu. On Tatsu, you can tell that you are above the rest of the park and you are truly flying. And other than that, that is pretty much it for this video. This one is certainly going to be a lot longer than the last one, which is pretty good. I'm trying to get longer videos out to you all so you all can get more content from me. And also, this video is also still trying to get into that new way I'm trying to run the channel. But in general, that will be it. So, hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Go on subscribing, leave a like. And I was really Critic, you were the viewer, and I'll see you in the future. Goodbye.